Hello YouTube, it is 12-ish on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Sketch, where I think I'm going to do something a little bit different. I talked about doing this different during my game streams this week, and it came to my attention. So I had a couple requests to do sort of how-to videos, and so I did that breakdown video on how kind of my process, how I went about drawing some of the Hyrule champions, right? Um, in response to my Rivali video. Um, but it wasn't really a how-to. I got some of the feedback I got from that video from friends and from Facebook were that it didn't really feel like a how-to. It was more like here's some techniques you can use. So I usually do fan art fusions at the end of the month here, but I think I'm going to change up the format a little bit, and I'm going to give you an honest how-to video as best I can. Today I am going to give you a how-to on drawing Rivali, and we'll just see how it goes. So, of course, you can follow along if you want, and I'll be using my Clip Studio Paint Pro. Little shout out to Clip Studio Paint Pro. They used to be called Manga Studio, I think, but they switched that up as well on one of their updated versions. So anyways, I will be using that. I will be using my Intuos tablet, and my number 2 Mac brush. Just kidding. It's just a tablet pen. But I do like how they do, those contouring videos, and they're like, and here's my Mac brush. Here's my brush. I'm just gonna contour it on the cheeks. Anyways, I hope I don't offend too many people with that impression. I think I am honestly very impressed with people who can do makeup like that, because honestly it's a lot like painting, just on a face. The point is to make it pretty, and I try to do that with these as well. So the first thing you want to do, if you're following along, and you can follow along with paper and pencil. You can follow along with whatever programs you're using. You can even follow along with a mouse. I'm going to try and make this as easy as I can. And the first thing that you always want to do is to find your image reference, right? So just fire up good old Google. Find some images of let's do Rivali again. Or actually, let's do Teba. I like Teba. Or Teba. He's a pretty cool dude. So we're gonna do. Let's do this in-game shot. Of Teba. And I'll just copy the image over into my image plane. It doesn't have to be a great reference either, is the thing, you don't have to get it exactly right, because again, even when I'm drawing stuff, I often will get it wrong and adjust as I go. For those of you wondering specifics, I'm using 1080, just general 1080 by 1920 ratio, and I'm doing it at 300 DPI, which I believe is just like dots per inch, which has to do with how many pixels you get in however much space, right? If I were to, because I like to do my sketches in 300 DPI, but when I'm doing um, more elaborate pieces, I like to bump up the DPI a little bit. But for Sunday sketch, we're just gonna do 300 DPI, and we're gonna fade that out. Okay, now the first thing, like I've done in my other videos, and this is part of my process, right, is to kind of study the anatomy. Anatomical studies are super important, right? So this looks to be his chest right here, and so I can approximate where his rib cage is. His jawline is here, so I can approximate where the rest of his head comes in, and so his head is going to be roughly there, which means this is just neck and neck here, right? And then the beak like that. And then his hips, you can very clearly tell where his hip line is based on that armor, right? So that's the truncated version of him that we're going to be drawing today. Okay, so the next thing you can do if you want to break it down even easier, and this is for the folks that can only they have a mouse setup. If you want to follow along with a mouse, is the next thing you want to do is you want to try and do a geometric study. Just break it up into shapes. And so I'm going to do you can do this with your line tool and a fill bucket, but I'm going to break him up into shapes. So that's a shape. Well, it probably doesn't even need to be that much, but and then I'm going to use an ellipse tool. That's a shape. And that's a shape. It's actually fairly common when I'm drawing to just do circles for like the torsos and stuff. And in fact, I could even do one for the head too. Right? So I could just come in here and say that that's a shape, and that's his head shape, right? So doing that geometric, or doing this style of geometric study is another way that you can break down a character. But then, of course, how do we take this and apply it to our own character? Well, that's what I'm going to try and get to next. So we have our shapes, we have our character, and I'm going to go ahead and try and draw him in a different pose, okay? So here's how we're going to do this. First, I'm going to start with those 3 circles, right? So we're going to draw a circle for the hips. We're going to try and estimate how far apart. Oh, sorry. He sneezes. Okay, we're going to try and estimate how far apart the hips and the rib cage are. That's the word for it. And then we're going to draw our rib cage circle, or oval. And then we're going to do the same thing for the head. So it's roughly there, right? And this is gonna be our skeleton. So that's gonna be the neck. That's gonna be that. And then from here, we can start building on our actual anatomical forms. Now, one thing about the Rito, and I will bring in another reference from Rivali, because one thing about the Rito that you'll notice is that their legs are bent. So one thing, if you want a really strong reference, Nintendo Wire has this image of Rivali that I think is from their actual model sheet that you can find. I'm not sure if this is actually the model sheet, but it certainly looks like a model sheet, and it is very well done. So whether or not this is the exact model they used for Breath of the Wild doesn't really matter too much, especially since we're just trying to learn off of it, right? So one thing you'll notice is that they've got very short hips, right? Or very short legs, sorry. Not short hips, but they've got very short legs in comparison to their torsos, which are very long. It's a very stylized thing, right? So when we're drawing in our legs, we want to make sure that we keep that take that into consideration. Now, one thing too is that I'm drawing out from the hip. So if we zoom in here and you look at where I'm drawing from, that's actually the hip, and there's a part on the body. It's called a bony landmark, and it's called, I think, I want to say it's the great trochanter, but my anatomy's not great. Images. No, it's not. It's the yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it is. Kind of. Except I'm actually drawing more of the iliac crest, I think. Ugh. Yeah, the iliac crest. So the iliac crest is that part in the hip bone, or in the pelvis bone, right? So you have your pelvis, and it kind of has this butterfly shape, roughly. And this bit here is called the iliac crest, and you can actually see that. And I like to pretend that these circles are that, even though it should be the greater trochanter, which is part of a leg bone. So anatomy aside, for a moment, this is where my hips are. And then, yeah, so basically those circles, I'm going to treat those as if they were the greater trochanter. And I'm going to draw in the pelvis. Now, these guys have kind of an interesting pelvis shape, so I'm just going to do this really fat V shape, because I'm not entirely sure what their pelvis looks like, because we don't get a good look at their hips, right? I'm just going to pretend that's in there. Then we're going to put in the knees, and you got to take into consideration again that they have very short legs. So we're gonna actually come behind the knee, pretend that there's a behind the knee, right? And then we're gonna draw in from there, because if you look here, his calf is actually, it actually comes in behind the knee, and his knee is probably in here somewhere, right? So that's how we're going to treat that. Except I'm pretty sure I drew this all on the wrong, yeah, the wrong layer. So this is a reference layer. I'm going to take all of my, this is something that I struggle with all the time. I'm going to take all of these, put this into a folder, name it reference, and that'll be my reference folder, and then I won't get it mixed up with what I'm actually drawing. So we're going to go to the actual hips. I'm going to draw in this pelvis shape. Pelvis approximation. There's a lot of approximation, right? And then draw the legs, and you want to draw out from the outside of the hips, right? So where we drew in the pelvis, right, you want to draw from the outside of the hips. If you draw from the inside of the hips, like, it's tricky and difficult to get it to line up right. So I like to draw from the outside of the hips, and then you add in like the meat stuffs, right? Because that's the outer part of the leg is closer to where the actual bone is. That's the important part there. So then we're going to put in the knees. We're going to come in behind the knees and kind of give him this bow-legged chicken deal, right? And then we're going to come in and we're going to clean up the pelvis, or the, not the pelvis, but the torso. So one thing you've noticed is that they are very slender. So we're actually going to come in here. We're going to come in right underneath the rib cage. And then their rib cage is going to force the chest to kind of balloon out a bit. And that's pretty normal. You know, humans do that, everybody does that. But then birds have kind of an interesting rib cage too. So in any case, there you have it. Then we're going to put in the shoulders, which on Rito are kind of rolled back, right? So the shoulder, the collarbone is actually slightly above the rib cage. So we put the rib cage in here. The collarbone is above that a bit. And I didn't draw the rib cage perfectly right, but you got the shape in there, right? So we're gonna put the shoulders are gonna be about there, and we're gonna do the same thing with the shoulders. Now they have a lot longer arms. If we look at how that goes, now this section of the arm here is actually fairly normal. It's not until you get to the forearm that you've got these huge glorious wings. So we're going to give them fairly normal proportions on the forearm, and if you look at your own forearm, your elbow should come in to about just above the hip. But because their torsos are so much longer, we got to look at the reference. So if you look at this reference here, his forearm, if he brought it in, would end just below the rib cage, which is actually, yeah, just below the rib cage is probably better than just above the hip, because I think I was leaning into it a little bit. So just below the rib cage. So we'll put the elbows in just below the rib cage, and then the wings. And the wings are going to come out, and they're just going to go. You know, they're just going to go all the way down to almost the feet. You don't want them to be longer than the feet because of how they, you know, move, how they walk around. Whew. Okay. So now we have our Birdman skeleton. So I'm going to go ahead and fade this out, this layer, or, you know, you can, hopefully you're drawing lightly if you're drawing on paper, right? So the next bit, actually let me slide my camera over a little bit so you guys can see what's going on here. Okay, so that way I don't get out of frame when I look over at my pad. Alright, so the next thing is we got to start adding in the muscles, right? Part of that's going to be the neck muscles, part of that's going to be the actual head, all that good stuff, right? So the neck is kind of like a bird neck. If you look at how you look over here, the neck is actually back here, the head is here, so he's actually got a little bit of this action going on with his neck, which makes a lot of sense with how he holds his head, and it also would allow his neck to move around more. Understanding anatomy, I think, is really the key here. And I'm not an expert, so I'm going to do the best I can. So we're going to give him a long neck that actually goes up into where the head is. And that's just going to be a nice, like, weird cylinder shape, right? Next, to support the wing, now they've got kind of a high breastbone, right? So that's going to be where their clavicle is, right? So the breastbone, basically. And then we're going to bring the rib cage down. Like that, okay? Next, you're going to build up your shoulder muscles, because we want to give them decent shoulder muscles. And if you look at, so those circles are the bone in the shoulder, and you can look at, or are meant to be the bone in the shoulder, where the socket is, right? And you can look and you can see where that bone is on your own shoulder. I've got kind of really bony shoulders, but you can see that's kind of where the shoulder, that's one of what's called a bony landmark, and I mentioned that earlier in the video. So we're going to treat that as being there, which means our shoulder muscle is actually going to come out, the rest of the shoulder, the meat stuff of the shoulder is going to come out here. Now that is kind of this, and it's got this kind of teardrop shape that goes into where the chest is. So that's going to look a bit like a football, and that's going to come straight out of the neck muscle and kind of be like a weird oblong-y football shape. And I'm going to do the same thing here. It's pretty easy to throw that in there. Then you've got your chest, or your the rest of your torso, right? And this is actually pretty interesting because it's broken up into, there's like a front panel, and this is where your abs would be, and then this goes all the way down to the bottom of the pelvis. So if you look at like human anatomy, you look at just Google human muscular system, right? And you can see these front panels that really does go all the way down into the pelvis, and then it's broken up into, you know, your abs, right? So this is the kind of abdominal section, abdominal plate, abdominal thing, right? And then on the outsides of that, you have these weird slanty bits, which I forget the name of. I want to say they're serrated something. And oh, here we go. Found a chart. So this is the serratus anterior, and those are like right here-ish. Because what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen is we're going to draw in where the biceps would be, and of course bird biceps are a little odd, so they don't have to necessarily be quite right or quite human looking. And then we're going to draw in those slanty bits. And their whole weirdness. But that's a little more detailed than I think we need, actually. Because I don't think we even need the biceps for what we're trying to do. But just to kind of understand where on the body that is, right? Then you got the hips are through here, and I'm giving him some good hips, because the bird guys seem to have pretty wide hips, right? And then that, my friends, is the whole trunk shape, right? And then you can look at the legs, and the legs can be real simple because you have your knee here, and you have your trochanter thingy here, and so you can just draw a line kind of ballooning out from there, and then you want it to come into the knee, and that's all there is to that. And then you draw from the knee to the groin, right? You draw from the knee to the groin, and then you have a leg. Like, look at that. That's super easy. And then I just come in here and I clean up the lines, and you have, it looks like a leg, right? Or, well, part of a leg anyway. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And you're going to end up getting a different shape depending on, angles and things. But that's like all there is to it. You draw a line from the knee to the trochanter, and then you erase some stuff, and you're good to go. Let me fade out this skeleton just a little bit more. And we're getting pretty close there. Of course, you can stylize things all you want by, honestly, by like omitting certain details. But you want to get the anatomy right? So, like, I can come in here, and I can erase that, and make this nice and simplified by just going straight into the legs. And then, of course, I won't include this bit, or any of this, really. And you can see on this side shot of Rivali, you can see where all of that stuff would be, right? Because that's where I extended the rib cage, and there's the rib cage right there, and then there's the hip. It goes down there, right? Into this is the iliac crest, and then the trochanter things here. And then that's the front of the leg that I drew. And if you're drawing the back of the leg, then there's a whole other thing to that that I can get into another time, right? So next, you want to draw the calf muscles, and this is interesting because the way I usually tackle this is to Oh, hi, Rico. Welcome to the stream. I'm going over a little bit more how-to specifics on drawing a Rito from Breath of the Wild. So I know it got requested on a couple of my videos, and I wanted to make sure that I really broke it down for you guys. And so if you guys want to draw or follow along, you totally can. Anywho, so what I'm going to do for this leg here is I'm going to actually do the front of the bone, right? So there's a bone that you can kind of see if you feel it on the front of your own leg. There's a bone that feels like it runs diagonally from your knee to your foot, and it kind of comes in at an angle, right? So like if I put his ankle right there and his knee right there, then this bone would be like here, right? Is basically what I'm getting at. And then from there you build up your shapes around it. But he's got kind of an interesting arc to his leg. So I'm going to do something similar in that I am going to acknowledge the presence of that bone, but I'm going to warp it slightly so that it curves up into the leg like that, right? And then, because his leg attaches up back here, I'm going to put in this little disc to remind me that, oh, the leg kind of curves back, right? And then I'm going to draw in my calf muscles. And go from there. And then you can see his foot is actually pretty interesting, because if you look at the Rito foot, it is basically just a box here in the red here. It's just a box with some claws on it, is all it is. So we're going to go ahead and draw that box, because that's where his ankle is going to attach. And there you go. So simplified version of this leg is just to draw kind of this long heart shape and then put a box on it. And then that'll go underneath your leg, or that'll go connect up underneath your knee, right? And there's the leg. And then you get fancy with the claws, and this is where you get into some foreshortening and stuff that I won't cover in today's video too much. Foreshortening, I feel like, is something that you just have to practice. You just gotta look at some objects, try and draw them, capture that foreshortened look. It's not an easy thing, and I'm not gonna cover it today just because I don't feel like like I know enough about how to cover it, really. So I'm just going to do my best to make it look good. And if you want to learn more about foreshortening, there are some great books out there. And I'm just going to do the same thing here, but it's at an angle, so I'm going to treat it as such. And then put the box foot there. And then the way I handle foreshortening is I take so you look at an object, right? So let's look at my pen here, right? And I pick a point on each object, and then I just draw the point. So if I were to turn it this way, I would just draw this front face of the pen, and then the back of the pen. And so I would treat the 2 points like they were separate objects. That's probably a bad example. Let's try... what do I have around here that would be better? Here we go. Here we go. So I got this little thing of glue. And I'm going to take this circle and this point of the glue cap, and I'm going to treat that like it's its own object, and then I'm going to treat the bottom like it's its own object. Or in this case, actually, I could treat this whole square thingy like it's its own object. So then I'm going to draw that separately. I'm gonna draw this bit right here separately, and then I'm gonna draw this bit right here separately, and then I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna add the details, right? So that's kind of how I cover it. So in this case, I have my foot base. I'm gonna put the back claw in first, and I'm gonna focus on the tip of that back claw, and then I'm gonna build up the rest of the foot, right? And then I'm going to try and go along the same angle, and I'm going to do the front of the claw. And build up from there. Keep some lines in there, erase some others, and there you go. A claw at an angle. Next, we're going to cover the arms, the forearms. Well, we're going to cover the whole arms, really. So one thing you may have noticed is I didn't attach the rib cage to the shoulders, and that's because it's not, because there's a whole section of like arm tissue in there, right? So what's actually going to happen is the pectoral muscles, and this is kind of this is not how real anatomy works. At least I don't think so, but it's close. Because if you look at how the pectoral muscles move, and again you look at your human muscular system, the muscles actually do attach a little bit into part of the shoulder. Not quite where I have it, actually. I'm going to scoop this up a little bit. You can go like that, right? And then out of here is where you get your bicep. And to do the bicep, I just take, honestly, I just go from where I left the, I go from like probably the almost halfway into that shoulder shape that I made, and I just do a curve down into the elbow joint that I made. And I just make it a little oval thing, right? And there you go. And that's the bicep. And then you can build up the rest of the muscles, the rest of the back, however you want. It's fine. Well, not however you want, but you know, there's not a hard and fast rule, but it does build up into that a little bit. And then the armpit is just kind of there. I think it comes together pretty nicely that way. I think it works. And then here's the trick, though, is the arm is, if you look at, we're going to look at this sheet again, the arm is very freeform. The forearm's very long. Here's the elbow joint here. Let me do that in red so you can see it better. Here's the elbow joint here. Here's the bicep right here. And here's the shoulder. Now it's interesting. Now if you look at how the shoulder's attached, right? Now on a human there is actually, you know, this back part, which I don't have very muscly, but on me. But if you look at the anatomy, right, there's a muscle behind it and there's a muscle in front of it. You got the bicep and the whatever's behind the bicep. And then the actual elbow joint is actually back here. but this is kind of the the inside-y pit of the elbow, right? And then the forearm is completely different, and this, honestly, it just scoops out, right? So we're gonna make a big old fan shape that's gonna scoop out from our elbow. So we're gonna put in the elbow inside pit part, right? And then we're gonna approximate, so this is where the elbow joint actually is. This is the pit of the elbow. And so it kind of creates this band. And then we're gonna just draw a big swoopy shape. Make sure that it doesn't go below the feet, or the toes at least. We don't want their wings to be dragging on the ground. And that's essentially what the forearm shape looks like. When we embellish with feathers and things, that's when it'll start looking fancier, right? But you always want to have a strong base. So I got to make sure that I get these basic shapes down first. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We draw our breastbone in the middle. We're going to take the shape of the pectoral muscle, and we're going to bring it up into the elbow, or shoulder. Elbow. Get out of here. I'll just drink some bleach over here. It'll be fine. Shouldn't joke about that, but I do. Okay. And then from here, from about halfway, so here, about halfway on the shoulder, we're going to draw the swoopy bit that becomes our bicep. Clean that up a little bit. Do the elbow and elbow pit. Draw a little band there. And then this arm, I want to have facing the camera more. So this one, when you're doing these big swoopy shapes, you really got to look at them kind of as three-dimensional objects. You got to decide, again, it's that foreshortening. Where is the front of my object? Where is the back of my object? Because if you look at the let's go look at this shape again. Over here, let's look at this shape again, right? We've got this is the front of my object here, but this is the longest part here. The back of my object, in this case, is right here. And actually, if you circle out all the feathers like that, it kind of looks like those are where the fingers are. Because if you look at his other hand, he's only got 3 fingers and then the thumb. So, then you got to decide, okay, if this is the front and this is, or if this is the front here and this is the back here, then this shape goes in front, this shape goes in back, and then we take that line and we basically try and rotate it in our mind until we get this fin. Anyways, that's all it is just a fin. Draw it like a fishy fin shape. He's got flippers. Wonder if any of that went into inspiration on the Rito or on the Zoras. Maybe, maybe not. So anyways, let's get back to our Rito guy. And, you know, at first I was going to draw Teba, because I really like him as a character. I think he's pretty cool, pretty chill guy. But we're just gonna original the character this and just draw a Rito. You know, you can make this look like any Rito you want to. But there are some key characteristics that are common among male Rito for sure. Except for that one guy who looks like an owl, And maybe I'll draw him next because he's interesting, because he's a completely different shape than all the other Rito. So anyway, the next bit that I want to add on here is the head. And their heads are, again, just kind of a circly bit. And again, the neck actually attaches up behind the head, instead of under the head like ours does, right? Because our neck attaches underneath our head. Their neck attaches behind their head. So their neck kind of comes up, and then their head is more forward, right? I don't know if you could see all of that, but their head is more forward from their neck. Anyway, so you kind of gotta approximate that, pretend like it's a 3D object again, and go from there. So the next thing is I'm gonna just fade this out, make another layer, and keep moving from there. Now, if you look, and again, reference is like you can draw anything with reference. You can, it's so easy. Anything you want, you can draw from reference. You can, and if you want to start by tracing, you can totally start by tracing. It's not a bad thing. You can definitely start by tracing stuff, and then learn from there and start making your own stuff, right? So anyway, when you are searching Rito, make sure that you're looking for the Breath of the Wild Rito instead of the Wind Waker Rito, because they do look very different. And of course, you've got different Rito, like you've got Cass, who is my favorite in the whole game. And you've got some female Rito, you've got Cass, you've got Rivali, you've got the owl guy, who is very different from all of them, and so I won't really be covering that here. And then you've got Teba. And the one thing that they all, except for the owl, have in common, because that owl, man, has to be different. Plus, I feel like they have to have an owl in a Zelda game now. I think this is kind of a given. But the one thing they all have in common is they all have this crest above their head, right? Like, Rivali has, like, cheek tuft things, and you can add that onto your own Rito if you want. But I'm not gonna. But the one design thing, and I'm sorry, I'm new at this format, so I guess I'm rambling a bit. But the one thing that all of the Rito have in common is that their hair comes up above their head like that. Okay. So we just want to draw a triangle out from the sides of our head circle, right? And then we want to give him a little bit of head. Phrasing, sorry. And then come down into the beak. And we don't want the beak to go too far down, but we do want it to go down enough. So honestly, you get this nice, like, diamond shape, right? Definitely not Falco. And they stand like that a lot too. So anyways, and then if you're drawing Rivali, you just add triangles for the side tufts, right? I mean, look at that. Oh, whoops. I guess they'd be more like this, and then this. So if you're drawing Rivali, it's just a series of triangles, man. If you want to draw whatever Rito you want to draw, then that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and give him more of a face shape, because I think I goofed on that one and made his face a little too narrow. So I'm going to give him those little cheek bits there, but otherwise keep this guy pretty vanilla. And if you look at Teba, for instance, Teba, let's open up our reference thingy. Teba does not have the cheek bits, but he's got this amazing mohawk. So they all have different bits and pieces to them. In any case, that's Teba's business. Oh, you know what? I still have that on there. But they all have these amazing crests up on top of their heads. So we're gonna actually, I don't want to erase that. I don't want to erase that at all. Show. There we go. Okay. Back over here. So fill out his face a little bit more, make it a little rounder, right? And then we got to decide where on this face the eyes are. And if you look at how Rivali's face is situated, his eyes are up here above the these are basically cheeks, right? So if we look at this, this is basically his cheek, and this is his cheek, and then his head is here, and then this comes to a point here, and so his eyes lay basically right on top of where his cheeks are, and you can draw the cheeks as these big circles, and then you've got the red cheek dot things. It's great. I really love his design. I could talk about that all day, or I can get on with drawing my original the character, I guess. So we're going to treat this like a cheek. We're going to approximate where the beak comes in, approximate where the facial planes, the planes of the face change, right? And then the eye goes in right here. And the eyes for the Rito are just these oval shapes, honestly. And then you can embellish from there. So I'm gonna give my guy, great big eyebrows like Rivali's, because that's another thing. If you look at a lot of the other Rito, they definitely have pretty amazing eyebrows. At least Rivali and Teba do, and most of the males do actually. The females have, just kind of painted on look, but the males definitely have these glorious eyebrows, except for Kaz for some reason. Or Kaz. Is it Kaz? I'm pretty sure it's Kaz. Yeah, it is Kaz. Anyways, Kaz does not have glorious eyebrows for some reason, but he's still my favorite. He's so great all the time. He's just this huge guy with an accordion, and he just seems so happy, and he's got this feather on his freaking side of his head. It's so great. So anyways, Kaz's head is more round anyway, and more like parrot shaped. And this is the part where I'd say, look at birds for reference. Find one that you really want to like emulate, and then you bring that into your own Rito with the head shape and everything, right? So my Rito has kind of a big rounded bill, and I'm gonna go ahead and give him these amazing eyebrows, and the Rito eyebrows are very triangular shaped, right? Just big old triangles. then I'm also going to give him the kind of like eyeshadow thing going on. And then if you want to get more realistic or whatever, birds tend to have nostrils roughly there. And then there you go. From there, gonna draw in the neck. And here's the part where I get a lot more stylized. Now that I have an understanding of where the muscle shapes are, I can get even more stylized. And again, my drawings tend to shrink a little bit as I work on them. But as long as I keep the right shape, I should be fine. So I'm going to actually bring his shoulders in. He's got the collarbone I'm going to draw in because it makes sense to me to do that. And I'm going to bring in this shape. And I'll break this up for you geometrically. This is just, that's where his pelvis is. His ribcage is there. Oop, and that eraser is too large. Oop, and that was the wrong button. There we go. Okay. Fade that out a little more so I can see what I'm doing. Then we're going to do our leg shapes, which again, very simple. You can add more detail to it later if you want. Like there's actually like leg muscle groups in here. So the leg actually looks probably more like this, and then this is like a there's a muscle that actually goes in around the kneecap. It's a whole thing. You can get as detailed or as little detailed as you want on this. But I like to establish how the skeletal structure would kind of fit together, and then the muscle groups, and then after that I get more stylized and start like omitting things and making things more angular, what have you. So I'm gonna bring his shoulders to more of a point. We're just gonna let his arms kind of hang straight there, and then go all the way down, keeping that fin shape. Kind of do a little indentation there just so that people can see, oh yeah, that's where his elbow is. Get my other fin shape in there. Although again, I did the fin shape too long because I'm kind of shortening everything up. So I'm actually going to take this knee, come back, put my calf muscles in there, put my square boxy bit in there, foreshortening on the claws. Boom. Bring the wings down to almost foot level, but keep them above that. gonna clean up some of the shapes here. Bring that chest in, bring the hips in. So he gets a nice, pleasing shape to him. Boom. And there you go. Next, of course, is where you'd start embellishing, adding the costume, all your features, you know, stuff like that. So the one thing is that the Rito have the baggy pants, which I'm going to draw here. And they basically just balloon out from the knee, the way I draw them, especially since they're like gathered there. So give them the nice big old baggy pants. Bunch it up about there. And then where did I decide yeah, okay, the crotch is about there. I like to draw on the crotch just for reference. Because a lot of the times clothing will kind of cinch up there anyway. And then it also allows me to be like hips there, and then, oh, yeah, okay, my pelvis is an okay size. So Rito have that going on for them. And then they've got this belt. Usually the belt comes down in a V. Gonna give him a big old belt. And then we can take that out. And then Rivali again has a sort of this falled skirt looking thing. I don't believe Teba does. And Kaz does not, but he does have a belt. So anyways, here's where you would draw in your armor, right, basically. And however you want to do that. The one thing that you got to watch out for, right, is that Rito almost always have baggy pants. They have the V belt, and then they have this breastplate shape. First off, above the belt, they got that kind of hip section there. And then this breastplate comes up from there, right? Rivali's got a breastplate that comes up there. Teba's got a breastplate that comes up there. And I think Cass also has Cass just kind of has a vest almost. So I think the important part when you're looking at designing your Rito's clothing is looking at the shape language on all of their clothing, and it tends to tighten here. So you have like a hemline there or what have you, and then sometimes it will go all the way up around like a vest, but it always has the arms free, so you can do a chest piece like that, and then have some sort of shoulder thing over that, a little jacket, or you can go all the way up like Cass does, and he has like a full-on vest with the arm shoulders. I am going to... what am I going to do for my guy? You know what? I'm going to come in here. I'm going to give him like this leather choker deal. And then I'm going to have this come down into that. And then I'm going to give him a little vest. A little, you know, not Falco vest. And then try not to erase too many things because I have too big of an eraser again. Another thing that I've noticed on some Rito, but not all of them, is that they have these little, like, armpit wings, it almost looks like. At least on Rivali, it definitely looks like he has these wings, like, attached to his collarbone almost. I know Cast definitely does not have that. Teba, I think, does not have that either. Although most of the reference material I've found for Teba has him from the side, so you don't really get to see it. Yeah, so that's just the thing on Rivali, honestly, the little shoulder or chest feathers that happen. So I'm not going to put that on my guy. And from here you just add your embellishments, you know, add your costume, like I'm doing now, adding a costume. The one important thing is to get your feathers in there, right? And so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now just to kind of show you. Bam, feather. Bam, feather. It's really, really simple to do that, right? And then one of the important parts is that there's a small amount of feathers here that come off, and then there's a larger amount of feathers here, right? So you kind of extend that fin shape to get, and you can see that on the reference on that I'll show you. So you see there's a small amount of feathers here, and then this comes out into a larger amount of feathers here. But these feathers are faced backward, like a normal wing. So that's the back-facing feathers. Those are pretty important. So I'm just gonna kind of get the idea in there. Okay, and that's all there is to it in making your own Not Falco. It's pretty rough still, but again, this is the Sunday sketch, so I like to keep it nice and sketchy and loose, just to get kind of a bunch of ideas out there, and you know, when it takes a long time to get something as nice looking and cleaned up as this Rivali reference image that I'm using. This is real, like somebody spent quite a bit of time on this, because you have these nice inked lines, and they got like nice line weight to them and everything. It is what I guess I'm trying to say is, don't be upset if your art doesn't look like this right away. You'll get there. The important thing is to understand the shape, to understand the structure, Build up those muscle groups and then stylize. Don't stylize first, because you'll end up getting your anatomy like all wrong, right? Like if I started out doing this guy, I'd probably end up ooh, I'd probably end up giving him, I mean, you saw it. Like, look, I had him like twice as tall as that, but then his head would have been really tiny and awkward looking. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to adjust things as you draw them, and he looks better this way. As you can see, I think he looks better this way. And then once you have it at least here, you can, color it and have a blast, whatever. Don't expect it to look like Nintendo material right away, but always keep trying. Hopefully, scoot that back over here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit more of a deep dive into drawing the Rito. I know clearly I care about video games. The people on my channel, or people that watch my channel, all care about video games. And I wanted to do some art to go along with it. So I think I'm going to turn this into a series and do how to draw videos on a lot of different characters if I can. I'd love to get your feedback on any characters that you want me to break down and help you guys figure out how to draw for yourselves. Whether that's, something as simple as Kirby, which, by the way, is not that simple, or anything in between, really. I mean, Kirby, Rito, what have you. Let me know what you guys would like to draw, what you guys would like to see me break down for you, and hopefully we can get some neat fan art out there. And if this style of video gets enough of a feedback, I will keep doing it. And I'm always taking requests for this kind of thing. So, show me what you got. Draw Rito. Draw an original of the character. As much as I generally frown upon those things, they can get pretty cringeworthy sometimes. It is all in good fun, and I need to get over myself because I'm a little bit of a snob that way. I'm like, it is, just drawing is supposed to be fun. I get too uptight about stuff. So, anyways, that's me rambling on and on and on. Hope you guys had fun. I will see you tomorrow when I'll start up my next Let's Play. So we'll have some more video games tomorrow. And about that, I am gonna do. I'm gonna start the stream tomorrow at 2 instead of, at 4 instead of ending it. That way, more people can tune into the stream after they get off work or school or whatever. Although it is summer. But I'm gonna start streaming at 4. Do a 4 to 6 Let's Play of It's a Surprise, so you can find out tomorrow, if I haven't said it already on one of my other videos. I forget. Anyways, take care, and I hope you guys liked the new video idea. And if you did, or if you don't, feedback. Always give me feedback, and I will draw more things, play more games. I wanna come up with something that you guys are interested in. So yeah, take care.